What's up, Internet? Let's talk Freezing Pulse Totems in 3.10. The good news is that this build is not changing much in the typical sense. There really weren't any passive tree changes. There weren't any nerfs to like Soul Mantle or Kizaru or Sanctum of Thought or anything that we'd actually need to operate the build just like we did in 3.9, which is a good thing. What's changing is this new cluster jewel system, which we have modified the skill tree to try and better support. So we've clipped a bunch of points out of the skill tree up here in Written in Blood and Doomcast. A little bit painful to let go of Doomcast, but the extra travel points up here made that a decent proposition still. We are still going to come down into Shadow a little bit for this life and this really powerful assassination node. But it may even prove that we clip these points too, depending on how efficient we can really make a cluster jewel chain. Currently, I'm holding back 13 skill points, from level 95, so that we can invest into some kind of cluster jewel chain up here. The problem is going to be that, at least as of right now, like we're one day before the league, we don't exactly know how these cluster jewels roll. So it's a little bit hard right now to suggest, exactly what kind of cluster jewels you're going to want to put together. We have some obvious candidates for really good nodes, right? As I mentioned in the Holy Flame Totem guide, there are some things like, Master of Fear and Wish for Death. These are really great, right? You can apply Unnerved from your curse. You can get Culling Strike from your curse. There's some just generically powerful stuff like Blanketed Snow, damage penetrates, 10% cold resistance against chilled enemies, some general elemental nodes. Arcane Heroism would probably be a strong node for us, 30% more increased effect of Arcane Surge. Some interesting life flasks. This is the one that allows you to remove bleeding when you use a life flask, so we can re-enchant our life flask with something else, right? There's a bunch of totem nodes. I didn't feel like any of these were super amazing, but Ancestral Echo and Ancestral Reach would still be pretty useful, right? This totem placement range is basically a completely new stat that would allow us to place totems from farther away. And then you have something like, Precise Commander. This could essentially serve as a replacement for Doomcast on some other cluster jewel that offered, more than this notable, right? So it's not hard to imagine getting a lot of value out of a cluster jewel chain, but the problem is going to be questions like, so if we look back at this Blanketed Snow, right? This is a high value node for us, but what kind of jewel can this come with? So if we imagine it's like, let's say it rolls on medium jewels. Does that mean it only rolls with these other two nodes? Because we wouldn't want either of these other two nodes, and that would sort of damage the value of a medium jewel. Maybe it can roll with all of these up here too. We wouldn't want most of these. They're kind of like average returns for us. But the answers to these kind of questions are basically everything, right? They determine how efficient it's going to be to dump points into a cluster jewel. And until we know for sure what kind of jewels can even exist, it's hard for me to theory craft exactly what I'm going to get out of cluster jewels. This one here would be really good. Both of these would be pretty good. I feel like it's a safe assumption that we can get at least similar value out of these skill points in cluster jewels instead of coming over here. The only thing I really know for certain right now is that we really want to end our cluster jewel chain in a small that has a life wheel, because we want to avoid, we had to lose these points of Written in Blood, and we really want to avoid having to put them in melding. It's the only other node we're connected to. This life wheel is trash. I don't know what they were smoking with this thing. It's actually straight up worse than Written in Blood in every way. It has no upside. It's just scuffed Written in Blood. So we really want to be able to end our cluster jewel chain in a small that has something like, if we look at their life list, like Holistic Health is 8% life, 10% mana. That'd be way better than having to take melding, right? Or Fettle, which is just 10 max life, or 10% max life, and then 20 flat life. pretty much all of these would be better than having to take melding, right? Because you would presume that those would end in like 3-point small clusters, and we'd still get at least just as much life as we would out of a 4-point melding. So that's the only thing I'm pretty sure about right now. Otherwise, not too much else has changed. We did lose the ability to get Zopex on boots, which is pretty unfortunate. They moved that exclusively to the amulet slot, where I think it's just going to kind of die, right? I don't even think the builds that are going to be focused on stacking a lot of mana for the new like Archmage support are going to be too interested in having Zopex on their amulet. Amulets are really competitive in the prefix slot, and it's such an offensive slot that I don't know if Zopex has really got what it takes. So I feel like Zopex just kind of died. Otherwise, I guess the fossil nerfs kind of changed the way we're going to have to think about rolling a helmet, I guess. It's not very impactful, if I'm being honest, especially compared to the way it impacts other people's builds. But it means that, you know, when you're buying a helmet off the trade site that has Freezing Pulse projectile speed, it's going to be much more relevant if that helmet has an influence or not. Because if it doesn't, you can't force that nearby enemies have 9% cold resist onto the helmet anymore. You're going to have to slam it with a Redeemer orb to do that. That's why they had to make this a Redeemer item, right, in the POB. Now, there are a bunch of different influence types that are good on helmets. We can get the Shaper, which has both cold, like flat cold dispels, but it also has a new, like, nearby enemies take increased elemental damage aura, which I think would be straight up better than this old cold resistance penetration aura thing. Hunter has multiple flat damage dispels rolls. Warlord even has like increased elemental damage and global crit multi, right? So it's not really going to be a problem getting a helm. It's just going to cost more at the highest end, because if your helm doesn't have influence, you can't get as much damage out of it, because you can no longer put this cold resistance aura on it. You're going to have influence on your helm, and that might just be, you know, sinking additional cost into one of the Conqueror orbs or something. But yeah, otherwise I don't think much is really, you know, needs to be thought about. This is a pretty known quantity. Very, very little has changed for Freezing Pulse Totems relative to everybody else's builds. It's just going to come down to optimizing our cluster jewel usage, and we can probably squeeze a few more points out of the build to go. Like I said, we could probably clip this if we can really get high value out of cluster jewels. It remains to be seen. But I'll probably update the forum guide more once the league's been out for a little while, and we can sift through these cluster jewels and really get a better idea of what can actually roll and what can't. I suppose it's worth mentioning that there are a couple of new skills, right? I think a lot of people are going to ask me about Arcane Cloak. I did have a quick exchange with Mark on Reddit, who confirmed for me that Arcane Cloak actually will work with cast when damage taken, because Arcane Cloak doesn't actually have a cost. So what happens to your mana happens after the skill is activated. The thing is, when they revealed the gems yesterday, the cost on Arcane Cloak is absurd, right? It's over 60% of your mana, I think. And I feel like that's going to be really, it's going to conflict really hard with Mind Over Matter in a build like this, right? It would make more sense in a build that has like absurd mana totals and is supporting their mana regen that way. But for us, where we have, you know, relative to some other builds, a lot of mana, but it's not like a true mana stack build, losing all that mana because we've taken a large hit sounds like a recipe for death, basically. So I have a feeling I'm not going to wind up using it myself. I'll take another look at it maybe when POB updates with the gems themselves, but I don't plan to include Arcane Cloak in my builds right now. Feel free to play with it yourself and see how you feel about it, but I feel like I'm going to keep Steelskin on there. And the other thing worth mentioning, there's a new second wind support that we're going to be adding to our Flame Dash link. So you'll have to remove either faster casting or portal. Probably faster casting, right? Because half the time Flame Dash is instant anyway. That second wind support will, it will add another stack, like another charge to your Flame Dash. So you'll go up to 4 charges. But they are nerfing the cooldown recovery speed of Flame Dash in the base gem. And second wind comes with a cooldown recovery speed like bonus for supported gems. So second wind will help offset that nerf a little bit. And so we'll really want to have that linked to Flame Dash. One other thing I guess is worth mentioning too is that this third, like this portal gem, or anywhere else that you can fit it in your build, but there's obviously a spot right here. There's the new skill Blade Blast. I can't add it here in POB just yet because it's not updated, but it's just a new skill that's like a targeted AoE that applies Unnerve on hit. And Unnerve is basically 10% more spell damage taken on enemies. And as you can see, it's literally just like a 10% damage increase because it's handled as a debuff, right? I don't have that ticked, and I don't have it in here because I don't know exactly how I would want to add Unnerve. I really feel like I'd be more compelled to add Unnerve, like I said, from something like Master of Fear, so that I don't have to have another active skill to apply in combat, because the base duration on Unnerve from Blade Blast is only like 4 seconds. So you'd have to be applying it quite a lot. And it's going to be really hard to fit like an increased duration gem. I guess you could replace Vol Righteous Fire with it. But that sounds, you know, pretty crappy, to be honest. Could probably go, you know, you could probably do something with your Cold Snap setup, or squeeze it into here in place of increased area of effect or something. That might be the way to go. Then you could spell cascade it. That seems more reasonable. I also don't know, I didn't double check to see what the dex requirement is, but I'm pretty sure we could cover it. Either way, Blade Blast is another option to get Unnerve into the build, and if you don't get it through like Warlord, or I think it's Hunter Gloves actually, and you don't get it through something like this this curse notable, then you'll probably want to try and include Blade Blast in your link somewhere to get that Unnerve. But that's really about all that's changed. This feels like a really known quantity, and if you played it before, I think it'll be at least as effective, if not more. I'm really expecting we can get more value out of our cluster jewels than we could in the passive tree, so I think we'll get a little bit stronger than before, but I kind of feel like everybody's going to get a little bit stronger because of that. So in general, the build is exactly basically how it was in 3.9. So that should do it for this video. I will be doing my League Start Progress series like I have for the past couple of leagues, but I'm not going to be League starting with this build, so that's going to be done with Holy Flame Totem. So yeah, I won't involve Freezing Pulse that soon. After that, I think what we're going to do is a video series for leveling to kind of serve as like an accompaniment to my leveling tip section, where I'll go through every single act and do every single quest and kind of go over the entire leveling process, so that newer players have like a more direct reference to as a leveling aid. I still get a lot of questions about leveling and league starting and stuff, so I think I'll probably do that with Holy Flame Totem too, just because I feel like that's a little bit easier, like a much newer player-friendly build. It's pretty much impossible to screw up, and it kind of carries you through the story, so we'll probably do it with that build. But I expect to not start that for at least a week into League Start. Anyway, we got less than 24 hours left, so I'm sure everybody's about excited as I am. Obviously, I'll be streaming a lot for League Start, so if you want to stop by and you have any questions, or you need like a gear check, or you just want to say hi and see how League Start's going, you can catch me at twitch.tv/WallachTV. And if you're looking for any more updates, keep your eye on the forum thread. I'll keep that updated as much as I can. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow for Delirium. Peace.